Hey everybody, let's do some graphics. So in this video, I'm just going to show you some real basics of how to draw on a canvas, on a JavaFX canvas. This is where it's really important that you have the right Liberica installation of Java, or this is not going to work. JavaFX is an official Java class library. But since Java 8, they have separated it out from the main library. So it has to be loaded separately, which is a real pain, and it's just a lot of hoops to jump through. But we found this Liberica release of Java that rebundles JavaFX back in with Java and just makes our life a whole lot easier. The purpose of what we're doing, the reason why we're doing this is not necessarily to teach you how to do graphics. It's just to give us another way to do output that's a little bit less boring than just lines on a screen, like a computer from 40 years ago. So we are going to do some some basics of graphical user interfaces later on, also using JavaFX. But for now, this is just going to let us draw lines and circles and squares and colorful images on the screen, which will make it just, I think, a little bit more interesting, I hope. Maybe a little bit more inspiring for those of you that might be into creating little 2D casual games and stuff like that. And my hope is that it will make some of you just write more code, because, as I said before, that's really important. So let's take a look at the guide here. The textbook has an end section on every chapter that talks about graphics. So 1.4 talks about the basics of doing graphical output using JavaFX. I've created a template for you that you can use for that purpose, which we'll get to in a second. But also, for some reason, they wait until chapter like 5 to show you really more than just a couple of circles that you can draw. And that's kind of boring, and it's really not that hard. So I figured let's put all this stuff up front. So I think this is what's covered in chapter 1, which is where we are right now. But I'm also giving you a bunch of other stuff that you can do here as well. And I'm going to walk you through some of it and then show you where to get more information. Okay, so by the end of this, I hope you should be able to create little drawings on the screen. We will use the graphics in class examples because they allow us to do things to show the code, the concepts that we're teaching in a way that we wouldn't otherwise be able to show them. We are also going to use them in assignments. And just a little bit, maybe occasionally in a test, there might be a question. But the focus of the test is not going to be on graphics and drawing. And nobody's expecting you to create great works of art or even great works of video game art. There's a whole other, if you want to do that, there's a whole other program for that here. This is just about plunking down some shapes on the screen. Okay, so I've got my IntelliJ up and running here. This is where I was at last time. There's a couple of graphical examples here. There's which is in the week 1 code, which you can download and import. There's this happy face program, and there's the FX graphics template. If I just run I'll just run the happy face program for a second here, so we can take a look at it. There you go, little black and white happy face drawn using on a canvas using JavaFX drawing commands. This is code from section 1.4 of the textbook. But what I want to do here is I want to create a new package for my graphics examples. I'll do an underscore there. There we go. And I'm just going to create a new file here, but instead of creating a new class this way, which I start with an empty class, I'm actually going to take the FX graphics template and copy it over. Okay, so if you take a look at the FX graphics template, you can see throughout there's comments explaining what's going on. And then it's pretty clear your code starts here, your code stops here. This is just a little template which, again, a lot of this stuff, a lot of the code that's in here will be explained later in more detail. So you'll understand this stuff a lot better later on. But for now, it's just a way to draw stuff on the screen. So what you'll do is you'll put your drawing code between here and here, and you'll end up with a drawing. So the way I suggest you use this is you copy this program and paste it over into graphic examples over here. And when you do that, you get an opportunity to change its name. Don't forget that all your class names should start with a capital letter. Otherwise, you're going to lose points on your documentation standards on the assignments. Okay, it's a standard in Java that we always start class names with a capital letter and everything else starts with a lowercase letter. So I double click here. It's the same file except that it's changed the name of the class here. If you remember, the class name has to match the name here has to match the name here. And this is a standard template comment here. I'll just replace this with example from video. There you go. And author Sam Scott. That's all I really need to do here. Now, first thing I want to do is I'm going to run this. Control-Shift-F10 will run it. And what you get is just a blank window. Okay, this is a canvas. So whenever you're doing graphics of any kind, you have to think in terms of pixels. Now I know you've done a little bit of this maybe from your CSS and HTML class, but what we've got inside this window is a big white canvas with X and Y coordinates. So the X coordinates go this way, the Y coordinates go this way. It used to be that if you get really close to a screen, I can see it on mine. Depends on the screen type now. You can actually see the pixels. You can actually see a little grid or little rows of little lights that have red, green, and blue values. And these pixels are numbered starting up in the top left corner with 0, 0. So as you go down, the Y pixel increases, and as you go to the right, the X pixel increases. So it's a lot like a Cartesian plane in mathematics, except that in math, usually the Y coordinates go up as you go higher. But here the Y coordinates go down as you go higher. It's kind of a standard opposite way of thinking in computers. Okay, you'll notice it has a particular size and it has a little heading here. You can change that stuff here. So right here where I set title, graphics examples, and here new canvas, this is where I can say I want maybe a 900, let's do a 16:9 ratio. Is that 900 by 600? No. Let's do 800 by 450. There you go. That's 16 by 9 divided by 2. And if I run this again, which I can now do by pressing the button now that I've run it once, I get a different shape of canvas. This is your standard widescreen shape with a different title up here. So you can change that stuff, and you should change that stuff to suit you. But other than that, don't change anything outside of where it says your code starts here and your code stops here. What this does is it sets up a whole JavaFX scene, and it creates a canvas object. You might be able to recognize what's going on here. We're declaring a variable called scene. Notice the lowercase s of type scene. And this looks a lot like creating a scanner. We're creating a new object and assigning it to it. This is the object we're really using. It's the canvas, which has a width and a height. So we're creating a canvas object here called canvas. And then later on, we call, see, canvas.getGraphicsContext. This retrieves for us the thing that we're actually going to draw on, which is an object called a graphics context. And this graphics context has a bunch of methods or functions built into it that let us draw. I could have named this whatever I want, but I decided that the standard for this course will be GC. You might even just want to call it G if you want to save yourself a keystroke. Okay, now if you want to draw on the screen, this is how you do it. GC dot, let's do a, you can see that it's giving me tons of help here. Let's do a fill rect. So fill rect. There's fill and stroke drawing commands. Fill commands draw a filled in shape. Stroke commands just draw like a single line stroke, so an outline. That's the difference between fill and stroke. I have to give it, if I go back to here, you can see it takes an X and a Y coordinate and then a width, and you can't quite see it here, but it takes a height as well. So fill rect, I'm going to say let's draw at X coordinate 50, Y coordinate 50, and we'll do a width of 200 and a height of 100. Now notice what's going on here. This is IntelliJ being really helpful. It's labeling from the documentation that's built into the system. So when I type gc.fillrect, notice it's getting this out of some built-in system documentation. It's reading the API to tell me what I could do next and what the parameters are for this and so on. This X is not really here. If you opened up this file in Notepad, you wouldn't see X colon or width colon here. These are little helpers that IntelliJ is putting in for you, which is a nice feature, but it can be confusing if you're a novice programmer. You might think that you have to type X colon 50. Don't do that. If I type X colon 50 here, that is a syntax error. It's supposed to be just numbers, but IntelliJ has added these things for me here. If I run this now, we should see my rectangle, I hope. There it is. There's my rectangle. Okay. I could draw another one. gc.fillRect. Let's do x of 100, y of 50 again, width of 10, and height of, I don't know, 300. Okay, now I should get another one. This is going to be, the width here is going to be much skinnier, and it's going to be much longer. So it's going to be a long rectangle going down. There it is. I started the rectangle inside of here, and because everything's black, you can't see. But what I could do is if I wanted to do a different color, by default the color is black, I can do a set fill like this. And then in here I can put a color name, and there's a number of ways to do that. The easiest thing to do is color dot and then pick a color from the list that comes up. How about Burleywood? That's, I don't even know what that is. And then semicolon on the end. I've done a lot of the setup for you here. So notice we're using a special class here called color. So this is a special color object. We're using all these classes called graphics, context, and so on. They're already imported up here. You can see color is there, stage is there, graphics, context is there, and so on. But if they weren't there, if you were ever doing this from scratch and those things weren't there, you can usually just go Alt-Enter here, and it'll figure it out for you and put it back. Put back the input. So now I should get my second rectangle, should be in a different color. Think of set fill like a pen. Okay, so think of it as we're doing these drawing commands one at a time from top to bottom. We start with a black pen. Anytime I call set fill, I change the pen. So now I've got a Burleywood colored pen. And the next thing, everything I draw from this point on will be in that color, Burleywood. There you go. Burleywood's kind of a tan color, I guess. So there we go. You can also do, there's also fill and stroke oval commands. Let's do a stroke oval. So this is for drawing circles. If you wanted to draw a circle, it would be an oval with the same width as height. So let's put this at x equals 300, y equals 200, and let's draw it as a circle. So we'll give it a height and a width that are the same. And we should get a circle somewhere over to the right, I think. There it is, a little circle over here. So what this does is it creates a rectangle with the width and height that I specify, and then it inscribes a circle inside of it. So you can see that if you go, I just copied this. If I change this to fill rect, but use the same numbers here, you'll see Control Shift F10, stop and rerun. You'll see that the circle is just kind of inscribed, just touching the edges of that rectangle. If I wanted it to be more of an oval, I could change the y to be a bigger number like that, for example. Oh no, not the y, sorry. Let's change the width to be 500 instead of 50. Run this again. And now we have a really wide oval. You can draw off screen, by the way. It's fine. You can draw something that's partly on screen and partly off. It can handle it. You can use negatives. If you want to just draw the corner of something, you can go gc.stroke oval, negative 100, negative 100, 200, 200, like that. So that will draw, I think what that's going to show up is, it's going to start with the top left corner is going to be off screen up here where you can't see it, and what we get is just the part of the oval that we can see. If you want to change, notice that you may have noticed that the oval's coming in black. There are two colors in the system. There's set fill to set the color of the filled shapes, and there's gc.setStroke to set the color of the stroke shapes. There are other ways, by the way, besides color dot. All these named colors here. You can also, there's a bunch of methods you can call off of the color class. One of my favorites is web, because I do CSS and HTML a lot. You can put any web color here. So RGBA. I don't know if you've used colors like that before. You can use a hashtag color code here. So FF0000 would be red. I don't know if you guys know how these work, but these are hexadecimal strings for a single byte. So the highest number is FF, which is 255. The lowest number is 00, which is black. This is the red component, this is the green component, and this is the blue component. That's how it works. So FF0000 means turn on the red component as high as you can and turn off the other two components. So we should get, this would be the same as, this would be the same as just specifying the keyword red. Now we've got red outlines. Okay, you can also do stuff like this, RGBA. Now it's in decimal, so 255.00 would be red, and you can add a transparency, say 0.5. Let's make this red and green. So red and green, if you mix them together, come out yellow. I think if I give it a bit less green, I get kind of an orange, but I could be wrong about that. Let's see what happens. Should get a kind of a semi-transparent orange. Oh yeah, you can hardly see it, but you can kind of see the black through the orange there. For stroke colors, you can also set the line width. As you can see, there's a bunch of stuff you can do. So I can say I want the line to be 20 pixels wide, and then Control-Shift-F10 to run it. Now everything I do from that point on will have nice wide. Now you can see the transparency that I put in there, because you can see the other shapes beneath, which is kind of neat. If I had put the transparency to 1 here, it would be totally, totally opaque. You wouldn't be able to see through it like that. Anyhow, I think maybe that's enough to get you going. Let's take a look here. So stroke oval, fill oval, stroke arc, fill arc. Oh yeah, I didn't do the arcs. We'll do those in a sec. Rectangles. Oh, there's also a stroke line where it just draws a single straight line from the first x coordinate to the second x coordinate. Oh, we should do some text as well. So let's do stroke text is weird. It gives you outlined text. Most of the time you'll want fill text, and you'll probably want to use a set font with that. So let's go. Let's do that real quick. gc.fill text. Okay. So again, here it is. The text and then the location, which I think by default is the bottom left. So fill text, hello world, 100, 100. So X and Y location of 100, 100. Let's run that. We should see hello world on the screen. There it is, 100, 100. Again, I think it's the bottom left, so that if you put 0 for the Y, if you wanted to get the text at the very top, 0 won't do it because it draws, 0 is right here, and then it draws the text upwards from there. So really what you want is something more like a Y of 20, and then then you'll see it somewhere near the top of the screen, hello world. If you want a different font, it's set font, and over here, not there, here. You could just, what you do have to do is create a new font with a name and a size. And this is a bit tricky playing with fonts. Easiest thing to do is use like a safe font like System. But let's say I want it to be 30 pixels high. So by default, it's something like 10 pixels high. Oops, I need to set this above. I need to set the font first before I do the fill text. Let's run that. Oh, I guess I didn't see it's red. I guess I didn't import. I didn't put that into the. I didn't put the import into the template. I should have done that. Alt Enter should fix it. Import class. Okay, when you do this, make sure you get the right one. This is a gotcha that I talk about in the handout. You don't want java.awt. You want the one that starts with JavaFX. Make sure you're importing that one. Oopsie. I've got my syntax is all messed up here. Should be like this. So new font inside brackets. You put the name of the font there and then the size. System is just a standard font that's always defined. It's just a really plain font. Let's run this. There you go. So, but it's much bigger now than it was before. You can try other font names here. Times New Roman might work. It's always a bit tricky because the fonts aren't part of the language. There you go. They are, so if the user that's running this code doesn't have that font installed on their system, the fancy font that you've selected, it's not going to work. So my suggestion would be to stick to what are called web-safe fonts. So if you go to this link here, it takes you to a list of fonts that are that you can use that are usually safe. So for example, Brush Script MT, if you want a cursive one. They're safe. They're web safe in the sense that they are usually on every computer. So no matter who what computer or operating system the user is running, usually Brush Script MT is there. No, maybe not on this one. Isn't there one called Comic Sans MS? Maybe that's there. Yeah, there it is. You can kind of see it. It's changed. Yeah, so don't get too adventurous with the fonts, because chances are my system doesn't have the same fonts as yours, and all your beautiful fonts won't show up the way that you want them to. Okay, so that's how you set a font. You set a color with set fill or with set stroke, and I've shown you a couple of ways to set colors. Here I'm using the web method. I just put a string there, or you can, if you these are all the same as CSS colors, by the way, but if you're happy with the named colors that are in the system, you can just go color dot. And if you want to look up colors, just look up HTML colors on Google, and you'll find tons of places where they show you examples and the named colors and stuff, so you can choose your colors that way. I think probably that's enough for now. I'll let you guys work with the arcs yourself. No, I'll show you arc. Okay, let me show you that. Let's do a fill arc as the final thing that we do. Just copy that. So fill arc, we need an X and a Y, about 200, 200, and we'll do the width and the height the same, 200, 200. So it's going to be, an arc is a circle, but it only draws part of the circle. So you have to specify a start angle. So if I go 0 and 90, and then finally you have to specify an arc type here. Here are your options. I always have to experiment with them to remind myself of how they work. I'll try archetype.open first, and I'm going to have to import this with Alt-Enter. JavaFX, make sure it's getting the right thing. There we go, we're good. Let's run this and see what it looks like. Okay, so what it's done is it started at angle 0, which I think is here, and then it's gone 90 degrees this way. And because of the choice I made here of the type of arc I wanted, it's filled it in by drawing a line there. Let me change the color here. gc.setFill color dot how about papaya whip? That sounds delightful. So let's go, let's put a different Y on it here. Let's move it down so that we can see it properly. Like that. And I'm going to change the archetype to, let's try chord and see what happens. So papaya whip is not that different from burlywood. And archetype chord didn't change anything, so I'll try the last one, which is round. Come on, do what I want you to do. That's what I wanted. So now it's gone from here up to here, but it's filled in the whole piece of the pie for me. So there's, you can draw different types of arcs this way. If I say I want it to go, say, 120 degrees, it should go a little bit further. The arc extent will be a little further. So it starts here at 0 and it goes this way. If you want it to go this way, you can put a negative number. You can go -90, it'll move that way. And of course, what do we really want to do? We really want to draw a Pac-Man. Let's make it a bit smaller. So we'll start at angle, say, 30, and we want to go around, say, 300 degrees. That'll give us 60 degrees of a mouth. And I mean, of course, you saw where this was going, right? There we go. There's Pac-Man. Okay, so it started at 30 degrees. So this is 0, 30's here, and then 300 took me to about around here. All right, I should really stop. But I want you to read over this stuff that's here. Oh, you can also look up the documentation. These are the 3 classes that we're really using. Graphics Context, which has all the commands built into it, color and font. There's a few things up here that I may not have covered as well. You can get that stuff in the JavaFX API. So API stands for Application Programmer Interface, and there's a link to it over here in the module. So this is the official documentation. It's under Textbook and References, Official JavaFX API. I'm going to open it in a new tab here. It gets you this. It's not super easy to use, but if you know the class you want to look up, you can type it over here. Let me just increase that. Graphics context, enter. No? There we go, graphics context right here. Yep. And it'll take me to it. And this, it's hard to read this documentation, but we're going to learn to generate our own standard documentation like this and learn how to read it as we go. But what you can do right now is there's a whole bunch of just general information on different methods and stuff. Actually, this is kind of nice. So you can see fill rect, fill oval, fill arc. They're all in here. And you can click on them, and what it will do is fast forward you to below where it tells you kind of how to use each method. If you scroll down, if we're back at the top here, if we scroll down past this initial documentation, we end up with a method summary. These are the method names here. So all the fill oval, fill polygon, fill rect, they're all here, and you can click on them to find out how they work, and it shows you their parameters and stuff. So you can get more info that way, and if you want to look up the color methods, JavaFX Scene Paint Color tells you how to all the different ways to create colors. You can .web, .rgb, you can add an opacity as well, which they call alpha, that's the transparency value, or you can just use the built-in colors. Okay, and you can go down here and you can take a look at all the built-in colors. You can also do the same thing with font. So you can look up font as well. Okay, I'm really going to stop now. So what I would like you guys to do is take a look at these graphical output exercises. There's a few from the textbook, basic stuff, draw a snowman. They're all circles and arcs. Here's the one I'd like you to try. How about we make a logo for this class? You know, text, shapes, colors, should have the course code 10062, the name programming in Java, and you don't have to put my name in it if you don't want to. You can put my name, or you can put something else there. So a little bit of text, and then imagine using rectangles, circles, arcs, basic stuff like that. Can you create, and colors? Can you create an interesting and engaging kind of looking logo for the course in a small window? So I'd like you to give it a try. Just play around, do whatever you want. And if you come up with something cool, I'd love to see it, so feel free to send it to me. Okay, I will see you guys in the next video on data types and expressions.